Everyone, welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm super excited to share with all of you one of the most exciting releases of the holiday season, the Pat McGrath Divine Blush and Glow Trio. So as many of you know, for a long time, people had been asking Pat McGrath for blushes, and this year she finally delivered and released an amazing blush collection. She came out with 9 shades and also a new highlighter with that collection. And so for the holiday season, she's put together these trios of 2 of the blush shades and 1 highlighter. So I really love Pat McGrath's Divine Blush formula. I picked up 4 out of the 9 shades. And if you guys are interested in seeing cheek swatches and my reviews of all those, definitely check out the links in the description box below. Since I love the ones I picked up so much, the remaining blushes have been on my wish list. So I was so excited when I saw that she had packaged these together because each of the blushes individually is $38, whereas this trio is $52. So less than the price of 2 blushes. So in this video, I'll be going over the deeper blush palette, which is called Amber Allure. I actually already have the full-size blushes that are in the lighter trio, so I'll also show you guys swatches of those 2. And also as a little bonus, I picked up this little mini lip gloss trio. So this is the Sunset Seduction trio, and I'll be doing lip swatches of all of these shades. So if you're interested in seeing swatches and my review of all these products, then just stick around. So first off, before we get into the blushes, I'm gonna go ahead and use the deepest shade in the lip gloss trio. So this is Flesh 6. And here we have it on the lips. Really pretty, very pigmented, perfect shade for the fall. Alrighty, so now let's get into the packaging of these blush trios. So they come in these pink boxes, and here it is next to the Celestial Odyssey palette. So much smaller, but the same general design. And this is a different pink shade compared to last year's Celestial Divinity. So the blush trio is in cardboard packaging, and the back lists the shade names. Inside we have a little mirror, and for the Amber Allure trio, we have Lovestruck and Paradise Venus, and then the highlighter is a new release called Venus Nectar. For size comparison, here is one of the full-size blushes, so you can see that you're getting much smaller pans. Personally, I'm fine with that though, because I never hit pan on my blushes, and so I'm always down for getting less product for a cheaper price. Also, these blush trios are made in Italy, which is the same as her full-size blushes. And here we have the finger swatches for Amber Allure. Lovestruck is described as a berry pink demi-matte. Paradise Venus is a terracotta demi-matte. And then I haven't seen an official shade description for Venus Nectar, but it looks to me like a mid-tone, peachy coral, slightly pink highlighter. I will say based on the swatch, I think this highlighter might be a tad bit deep for me, but I can probably still pull it off on top of blush. If you have a lighter complexion than me though, you might want to go with the lighter trio. So Paradise Venus in particular has been on my wish list for the longest time, so I'm so excited to get this on my cheeks. So to start off, I'm going to take my Sonia G Cheek Pro and dab it into Paradise Venus very lightly. And I'm going to concentrate this a little bit on the outer portion of my cheek just so we can really see it clearly in comparison to Lovestruck. And today I just have on the remainder of my sample of the Tom Ford Shade and Illuminate foundation. Normally, I would also have bronzer on at this point in the makeup application process, but I really wanted the shade of the blushes to just stand on their own. So far this is blending in nicely. I will say there's a little bit of patchiness, so I do feel like I need to buff this in a little bit more. This is a pretty pigmented blush shade. One thing I was really curious about with these more pigmented blushes is it does seem like she has slightly different formulas. So with the original 4 that I got, I had 2 demi-mattes. So there was Divine Rose, which you'll see later, and also Electric Bloom. And I really love the formula for Divine Rose. It's one of my all-time favorite matte, demi-matte blush formulas. I did not like Electric Bloom though. That did not work out for me at all. So I just really hope these formulas are more like Divine Rose and less like Electric Bloom. Alrighty, so I really built that up just so you guys can hopefully see the shade. And I would say I really like the shade quite a lot. I am getting this weird bald patch. I don't know if you guys can see, but I feel like I can't really build up much product there, so that's a little bit annoying. I'll try later on going over that with bronzer just to see if that works, but that is a little bit concerning. So I did not set the foundation today, but I do feel like the Tom Ford Shade and Illuminate is not too greasy on its own, so I was hoping this would work even without powder. So now with my Sonia G cheek brush from her Lotus set, I'm gonna dip into Lovestruck. So this one, I'm gonna concentrate more towards the center of my face because eventually I'm gonna try to even out these blushes, but for now I'm doing them on different sides just so you can see them really clearly. Alrighty, so this one does seem to be blending out a little bit better. It could also just be that I think in general, where I have my cheekbone, sometimes there's a little bit of difficulty with blending, but this is looking pretty good. This is a really pretty sort of winter, just been out in the cold kind of shade. Alrighty, there we go. So I do like how this one applied a lot better than how this one applied, which is a little sad because I was really excited about this shade. But I'm gonna now even things out so I can just see if it's just, you know, this being my problem cheek versus if there's really a difference in the formulation. So before we do so, here is Lovestruck all by itself, and here is Paradise Venus. So now I'm just gonna take a little bit of Lovestruck and put it on this side. And these two are very pigmented, so be very careful when dipping your brush in, especially if you're really fair. Tap off your brush, maybe go in with a sponge afterward just to pick up any excess product. I will say it is interesting putting these two shades on together because I would normally not think to pair a sort of cool toned berry matte with a really warm toned terracotta. It's kind of working. It's a little bit messy. In the future though, I probably would only use one of these shades when I'm picking up this palette rather than layering them like today. Now going back in with my other brush and Paradise Venus, let's put this on the outer portion of this cheek. Okay, I do feel like it's applying a little bit more smoothly on this side, so maybe it was just an issue with that particular cheek. I do have a little bit more trouble with blending on that cheek. Alrighty, so looking at my face right now, I do think I went a little overboard with blush, but that's okay. Today is really about showing you guys these blush shades and formulas. So now taking my Artist Small brush, I'm gonna go into this highlighter, and wow, that definitely picked up a lot of highlight. I'm just gonna tap a little bit of that off. This one is definitely pretty loosely pressed. Yeah, you can definitely see a lot of pigment. It's okay, we're just playing around today, so it's good if you guys can see this from space. I feel like the camera always takes away some of the makeup anyway. So here we have the highlight, and this is pretty beaming. This is very different from her Divine Rose highlighter, which she released around Valentine's Day. So that is one of my favorite highlighters and is very, very subdued. This one definitely will give you that sort of wet, almost slightly metallic look. So let's do the same on this side. And I will just say, if you do want a more subtle look with this, be extremely careful with the pickup because this is very, very loosely packed. Like I'm using a very soft squirrel brush and I'm not even like digging my brush in. I'm just literally tapping it in the product and picking up plenty of product. So here we have it on both cheeks. And of course with highlight, when the light hits it, it'll look really bright, even if it's a deeper shade. I would say that looking kind of straight on, there is a tiny bit of cast on my skin tone, but I'm personally fine with that as long as it's over blush. I have to try out later in this video using this as brow bone highlight and inner corner highlight. That'll give me a better sense of how this looks on my skin tone. So now that we have the cheeks done, something I always like doing when I'm doing a blush demo is to put the blushes on my eyes as eyeshadow, just because I think that makes it a little bit easier to see the shades of the blushes, since for the eyes, I'll really pack on the shades. Given how pigmented my cheeks are though, I think you probably already know how this is gonna look, but hopefully this just ties everything together. So starting with my trusty Wayne Gloss number 16, I'm going into Paradise Venus and using this as a transition shade. On my lids, I just have that Tom Ford foundation, so this should also give an indication further of how it blends on top of foundation. Unset. Okay, that actually blended in really easily, which is great. I'm just hoping that that initial application on this cheek was kind of an anomaly. Does seem to be doing pretty well as eyeshadow. And I do think this color is very, very flattering. It's a really nice sort of nude color for someone with medium to tan, maybe even deep skin tones. Provides a nice almost contour effect, but there's enough red in it that it still looks like a healthy flush. Alrighty, so here is Paradise Venus on the lids. And now with my reference number 15, I'm going into Lovestruck. And originally I was gonna really pack this in the crease, but I think I might also just kind of sweep this all over the lid because it's a little bit lighter than I thought it would be actually. So sweeping this a bit on the crease as well. Just gonna bring a little bit of Paradise Venus back. And now with my Chikuhodo GSN 9 brush, I'm going into the highlighter and basically gonna sweep this all over the lid, at least the inner 2/3. And this is actually pretty impactful for a highlight. I feel like usually highlighters are not really good substitutes for eyeshadow, but this is doing a decent job. It's holding its own. So this is nice for a sort of slightly colorful, but still kind of subdued eyeshadow look. I am noticing a little bit of creasing, which is understandable given that these are cheek products. So in the future, if I do this kind of look, I probably would put on some primer instead of just having this on top of foundation. But hopefully this still wears well throughout the day. So now with my mini booster, I'm going back into that highlighter and I'm gonna try out the inner corner and brow bone. So let's see if this works with my skin tone. Really pretty highlight. Definitely when the light catches it, it looks pretty bright even on my skin. I would say turning my face around, I see a tiny bit of a cast, but actually not as bad as I thought. So if you have a medium complexion like myself, I think you can pull off this highlighter even if you're not using it as a blush topper. So now with my Smudger 1 brush, I'm gonna go into Paradise Venus and work on my lower lash line. I'm gonna concentrate this a little bit on the outer corner, but also kind of blur it all over my eye bag. And then flipping that over, I'm gonna bring in Lovestruck in the inner 2/3. And then finally bringing in that highlight. And I'm gonna just start this in the inner third and kind of sweep it outwards. Alrighty, so here is the blush as eyeshadow look done, and I know there's a ton of color on my face right now, but I'm gonna go off and apply some eyeliner and a little bit of bronzer, and hopefully that just ties everything together. Alrighty, so here is the completed look. I'll just say thank goodness for eyeliner and bronzer because I feel like it helped a lot with pulling this look together and having it look a little bit less clownish. This color story I think actually works even though it's a combination of cool and warm. Not something I'm gonna go for all the time. Again, I think I'm gonna mostly use these blushes separately, but if you mash them up, it actually doesn't look terrible. So overall, I really like this palette. I would say other than that little hiccup at the beginning where the shade wasn't really adhering to this cheek very well, overall the quality is really great and the performance is really good. I think the Lovestruck shade especially is really easy to work with. It just melts into the skin. It also has a little bit more sheen than the other demi matte formulas, which I think is quite interesting. It almost has a little bit of a lit from within effect, which I really like, especially for this sort of berry tone. Paradise Venus, even though it was the shade I was most excited about, is definitely the one I'm gonna have to play around with a little bit more. I don't think it's quite as bad as Electric Bloom, which for me was just a terrible formula. Definitely watch my review linked in the description box below if you're interested in seeing what I mean. But basically that one was really powdery and didn't really melt into the skin, so it would just look super patchy. I'm still hopeful that Paradise Venus is not like that, but I'll have to keep trying it out to really test that. This highlight shade is really nice. I would say it's a little bit more blingy than what I would go for on an everyday basis. But given that I do really love my Divine Rose highlighter, which is a much more subtle highlighter, it is nice having the option of a much more high impact highlight from Pat McGrath. And I am pleased that this shade seems to work on me and doesn't leave too much of a cast. So before we get into the lip gloss swatches, let's talk about the lighter palette, Galactic Sun. So this has to be one of the releases of the year that I would most recommend to any of you who don't already have the shades in that palette. So if you guys watched my blush rankings video, you know my current all-time favorite blush is this Desert Orchid blush from Pat McGrath. And this is in her Shimmer Pearl formula and is one of the shades in the Galactic Sun trio. So here is a finger swatch, and here is the arm swatch. And this is described as a bronze rose with golden pearl. And this is basically my perfect blush shade for going with pretty much any look, because it both has those bronzy tones that go really well with any sort of gold, bronze, or warm toned or neutral look that you have going on. And it also has those rose undertones, so if you have something that's a little bit more pink, a little bit more red, this blush will still be able to match. It's just really natural and flattering on the skin. And this particular formula, her shimmer formula, is just so impressive. It remarkably manages to blur your skin texture a bit, even though it's a shimmer formula. Typically shimmers will highlight your texture, and I find that this actually does the opposite. So I love this blush so much. I would definitely recommend that palette, even just solely based on this blush. But it just so happens that palette not only has my all-time favorite blush, it also has one of my favorite matte demi-matte blushes, which is her Divine Rose blush. So here's the finger swatch, and the Divine Rose blush is described as a cool mauve rose demi-matte. Overall, when I put this on my cheeks, it looks mostly pink. I don't get a ton of the cool toned mauve, but given how much I love rose looks, and in particular everything Divine Rose from Pat McGrath, this blush has been my go-to whenever I'm doing a Divine Rose type of look or a similar color story from another brand. This demi-matte formulation is also so amazing in that it's really smooth and easy to blend out on the skin. There are no issues of patchiness whatsoever. And I would say it's a lot less powdery in comparison to these deeper Divine blush shades. These definitely release their pigment much more quickly and can be a little bit patchy, but you might actually be able to see even just from the swatch here, but this is just very smooth and velvety. My only critique would be, obviously, if you have a much deeper complexion, you're gonna have to dig into this quite a bit in order to build up the pigment. But at least as you're building up the pigment, it's gonna go on super smoothly and not have any patchiness. So I don't have the highlighter from her original release, which is what is included in this trio, but I do really like the formula based on today's trial. I think it's basically a lighter, more nude champagne version of the highlighter in this trio. So if your skin tone is in the light to tan region and you don't have any of the shades in the Galactic Sun trio, I would highly recommend it. Definitely the best deal that I have personally seen of really any of the makeup releases this year, just given how amazing these two blush shades are and how nice this highlight is. Of course, packaging wise, this sort of packaging is a lot nicer than the cardboard packaging for the trios. So if you are looking for more of the full Pat McGrath experience, I think it is also worth it just to pick these up in the full size. But if you are budget conscious, I think the trio is definitely the way to go. So now let's get into these mini lip glosses. So let me just start by saying that Pat McGrath has one of my favorite lip gloss formulas of all time. It is so rich and hydrating on the lips. It really fills in any lines in your lips and makes them feel really nice, juicy, and plump. There's also a really pretty sheen that comes with these lip glosses, and I find that all the shades that she's released are just really, really flattering. As you can see from this trio, these come in a variety of formulas and opacities. So the one I have on right now is in her High Shine formula, which is very pigmented. This is Flesh 6, and it's described as a rich rose brown. And next we have Sunset Rose. This is a warm rose with golden pearl. It's in her shimmer formula, so it's a little bit less opaque and has shimmery particles in it. So here we have Sunset Rose on the lips, and you can see that this is definitely less pigmented in comparison to Flesh 6. But because of that golden shimmer in it, my lips probably look a little bit fuller and more voluminous as a result. I think this is one of Jenna Fraze's favorite lip glosses, and so I was really excited to try out this shade given how much she raved about it. I think on me, this runs a little bit more neutral to cool rather than warm rose, as the description would imply, but still a really great everyday shade, and I think this actually matches really well with today's look. Next we have Love Potion. So this is also in her shimmer formula and is described as a pale pink taupe with iridescent pearl. So here we have Love Potion on the lips, and this one definitely doesn't have much base pigment at all, but because that iridescent pearl is quite light on my skin, I think this does have an overall sort of milky effect, which is quite interesting and would go really well with either really colorful looks or something that's slightly futuristic. I normally don't go for really light shades of lip gloss, but I actually think this one looks pretty fun. And because I imagine many of you, like me, probably have a number of Pat McGrath lip glosses, I want to show you guys some comparison swatches as well. So on the top we have Sunset Rose, followed by Divine Rose, which is just a little bit more cool toned and mauve. And then we have Secret Lover, which is in her High Shine instead of shimmer formula and is deeper and more plummy. And then we have Bronze Temptation, which is much warmer. And here we have Love Potion at the top, followed by Dare to Bear, which is a little bit more pigmented and pink. And then Bronze Divinity, which is much warmer and has golden pearl instead of iridescent pearl. For Flesh 6, I did just realize that I actually own the full size Flesh 6. So I guess this will just be my travel size mini, but I do really love this shade. So would definitely highly recommend this trio based on my experience with even just this shade alone. So that's it for today's video. Let me know down in the comments below if you guys are picking up anything from Pat McGrath's holiday collection, and in particular, I'd be really curious if you have a favorite Divine Blush shade from her. Now I've tried all of them other than Nymphette, Flirtatious, and Cherish, and Nymphette and Flirtatious have been on my wish list. I do feel like I have a lot of her blushes already, but you never know. If they go on sale, I might pick those two up. But thank you guys so much for joining me today, and if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you all so much for the support, and I'll catch you next time. Bye!